back to yet another late night broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. We are late once again, but accept my sincere apologies on that. And we get this one done. Pretty much in similar fashion or style like we did yesterday. We will keep this one a bit short to see and see how it goes. We'll keep it a bit short in about because it's 41 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. So maybe for the next 20-25 minutes, and then we'll be done. It's been that kind of weekend. It's been a very, very long weekend, one that will continue to digest in the course of the week, in the wake of the fact that the international break gets underway. I don't know if I get lucky. I'm trying to, source for some, engagements or interviews for me, so that I bring you more voices on the channel, so that you hear from different opinions. But for those that have watched our, video about whether Liverpool are a team in crisis, thank you so much. Still, I've yet to see any comments. I've yet to see any comments. Maybe no comments. Yes, that's very, very unfortunate. But I hope the situation will be better. Anyways, oh, sorry, forgot to have our audience tested just to make sure everything does check out. It almost eluded me. It almost eluded me. How could I forget? I wouldn't. The last thing I would want is for us to burn our hands just because we did not, but it looks like we are good to go. It looks like we are good to go on that front. Anyways, to all our new subscribers to the channel, welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. We're at about 1,721. It's a pleasure to have you around. Continue supporting, continue loving what we do. I mean, what was I going to say? Anyways, just go to the community section and let me know. Put your comment down in those videos, and I'll be able to sort of I'll be able to respond. Sometimes, if the comment in itself is worthy of responding in a full video, that's what we will do. If that's is what it does necessitate, yeah, and we take it from there. Anyways, it's been a full action-packed kind of week. Oh, sorry. Weekend. Dating for Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. So many, a lot of teams winning and things like that. But where do we start it from? Barcelona have just been humiliated in an absolute thumping, losing 4-1 against Sevilla, while in the other results, Napoli managed to snatch it away against Genoa. Rasmus Højlund scoring the winner in that game once again, showing up tall, standing tall for what was I even going to say? Saying Rasmus Højlund once again standing tall to salvage or to win the game for Napoli. Manchester City had to grind it out, but they still walked away with a very, very important victory. While Ange Postecoglou on the other side could be, maybe is he to be sacked? I mean, he's just suffered another defeat. That means that's 5 defeats in his in the 6-7 games that he's managed, because they have 2 draws, and losses, just 5 losses. So you could understand if there's that sense of frustration from that side, from that side. So yeah, Hopefully, it won't be the case. But let's start off with Nottingham Forest because Nottingham Forest were at the end of a 2-0 defeat against away to Newcastle today in the Sunday fixtures from the from the Premier League. So, oh, sorry guys, something that I needed to get to. I don't know. I'm struggling with my phone, guys. All my phones are spoiled, just like that. It's very unfortunate, but it is what it is. If there's anybody that can save the situation, please just come through for me. But all my phones are just spoiled, and I'm sort of struggling with them. But anyways, action kicked off with 4 games. That was at 4 games of, that kicked off at 4 p.m. Across the Premier League. And in those 4 games, Aston Villa, like we had predicted, were 2-1 winners against Burnley. Not that we got a perfect score, but it was a beautiful victory for Aston Villa. The Neil Malin scoring the burst in that one to earn all 3 points for Aston Villa in pretty spectacular style. His goals were really brilliant on the day. Then I think it was Leslie Ugochukwu who scored what turned out to be a mere consolation for the visitors. That's Burnley on the day. Then Everton had to leave it late to beat up against Crystal Palace by 2 goals to 1. That winning goal scored by none other than Jack Grealish, the unknown star from Manchester City, who turned out to be the difference. That goal came in the 3rd minute of added time. It was, I think, about 8 minutes of added time, so he scored in the 3rd minute of that. But then Crystal Palace in the opening half had opened the scoring through Daniel Munoz in the 37th minute, with Ismail Sarr providing the assist for that one. Then Ilman Ndiaye scored a penalty in the 76th minute to restore parity on the day, and it turned out that they won. That's how. Sorry, to cancel out, that lead from Daniel Munoz, and like I said, Jack Grealish came through, and Everton collected all 3 points. I think my prediction had been a 1-all draw between the two sides, but somehow Everton found a way to break it, break the tie. And as they ended Crystal Palace's 19-game unbeaten run that dates to as far back as last season. This season, they were the only team in the Premier League that were unbeaten until March the 7th. So Everton said, now we are putting a stop to that. So we'll be looking at what all that means on the Premier League log. Then away to Newcastle, Nottingham Forest lost by 2 goals to 0. A brilliant strike by Bruno Guimaraes, although I thought the build-up, in the build-up leading to that goal, there was a foul that was not called against, I think, Morgan Gibbs-White. The way they clattered into him, you could argue that he had conceded possession, but if he's not clattered into the way he is clattered into, I think maybe he is able to pick himself up and then go ahead and, fight for that ball and maybe intercept or avoid, Bruno Guimaraes running away with it. So, I found that very suspicious. Then I think Elliot Anderson committed a very stupid foul inside the area that then culminated into the penalty. He literally gave the referee no choice. Sport pointed to the spot, and Nick Voltmada stepped up and scored from the spot to make it 2-0. That means he scored 3 goals for Newcastle in the Premier League, one against Arsenal, one in their 1-0 victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers, and then, of course, this weekend. Then in the other game, Wolverhampton Wanderers shared the spoils in a 1-all draw with Brighton. Our prediction had been a 2-1 victory, I think, for Brighton away to Molineux, but it did not turn out to be that way. Things turned out to be quite very different as Brighton won it. Then in the late kickoff that came at 6:30 p.m., Manchester City managed to beat Brentford by a 1-0. That goal scored by Broad Erling Haaland. I think he was scoring his 9th goal of the season, with Josh Covadiol providing that ball. Very, a very long pass from deep in the Manchester City half. And then he runs onto it. Of course, he shrugs off a couple of defenders with his, physique before putting that ball past Kelleher. Brentford had some chances to restore parity, but it just did not happen. They only had one shot on target compared to Manchester City's four. I thought Brentford did well enough to sort of limit the damage that Manchester City were capable of causing them, which was very, very brilliant, must I say. But on the other side, things just did not happen for them in terms of creating that real threat. Manchester City sort of had some bad news in that game because their player in Rodrigo Cascante suffered a muscle injury, so he was forced off before and then he was replaced by Nico Gonzalez. I mean, it was that kind of game where you could sort of struggle to choose who your man of the match was, really, because it's not like Manchester City at the GTEC Stadium were overly dominant in their offensive duties. Ball possession wise, of course, they dominated their affairs. They passed the ball around 70% of ball possession and things like that. That's to be expected of a team like Manchester City. Playing against a team like Brentford, whether it's away from home or at home. So that's really, really expected. But for me, I sort of struggled in a sense to see what there was to sort of to cling on to say that that this is worth it, that maybe this is this is the standout performer of the day in that sort of sense. So yeah, anyways, we will see how everything goes. But Manchester City managed to win. Speaking of those victories, this is what those victories mean on the Premier League table following the conclusion of match day 7 of the Premier League. Arsenal, like I told you yesterday, retained that top spot with 16 points, and their next game will be, I think, at home against Fulham. That's after the international break. Liverpool comes second on the Premier League globe with 15 points, and their next game will be at home against Manchester United. Tottenham Hotspur will be up against Aston Villa. I think they will be at home at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They come third with 14 points. Bournemouth fourth with 14 points. Manchester City have climbed to fifth on the Premier League log with 13 points. They have 4 victories, 1 draw and 2 losses so far. Pretty much like majority of the teams in the other upper end of the table. I think yes, that's the case. So meanwhile, Liverpool, because they've lost 2 consecutive games in the Premier League, that means they've already lost half of the games that they lost in the entirety of last season within the opening 7 games. I just thought maybe that should be food for thought for the Liverpool fans out there. It's not the kind of statistic that you want to have. I seem to remember. I think they went 11 games unbeaten last season across all competitions. I mean, they were just winning it all left, right, and center. And I think even in the Premier League, because it took Nottingham Forest to beat them. Sorry, in 6th place is Crystal Palace, who, like I said, lost to Everton. Manchester City's next game will be against Everton. Bournemouth will be up against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace themselves, who are in 6th place, will be up against Bournemouth. Chelsea, next game will be away to Nottingham Forest. That's after the international break, but they are 7th with 11 points. They are on a similar tally of points with an 8th place Everton and the 9th place Sunderland. Now, Everton will be up against Manchester City after the international break. That game, I think, will be at the Etihad Stadium. Then Sunderland will be up against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Manchester United, who are 10th on the Premier League log with 10 points. I've told you already, they'll be away to Anfield. The Newcastle will be up against Brighton, and they do occupy 11th on the Premier League log. Brighton themselves are just behind them. They all have 9 points apiece, just like as much as Aston Villa are in ninth place. Now, Aston Villa have won 2 games, I think 2 consecutive games in the Premier League, and three, is it 3 or 4 consecutive games? Yes, 4 consecutive games across all competitions, 2 in the UEFA Europa League, 2 in the Premier League, with 3 draws, which puts them at 9 points. So 3 draws, 3 losses, sorry, 3 draws, 2 losses, and 2 victories. Yes, that's the tally of results from Aston Villa. But they've managed to climb themselves out of that relegation spot at some point. They were 19th on the Premier League globe, and I did say that I was never really that worried about Unai Emery and his ability to pull out Aston Villa out of that sort of sinkhole. Then Fulham, like I said, will be up against Arsenal. They occupy 14th place. They've suffered 2 losses on the spin, and they have 8 points in 14th place. Leeds United, 8 points, 15th place. Brentford occupy 16th place with 7 points. Their next game will be up against West Ham United. Nottingham Forest occupy 17th. We talked about Nottingham Forest losing today against Newcastle. That means that Nottingham Forest, particularly, they've lost 5 games out of 7 games that Ange Postecoglou has been in charge of. Following that defeat away to Newcastle, those draws, one came in the UEFA Europa League against Real Betis, while they lost to Midtjylland just in the course of last week or this week, depending on how you count your days, whether Monday is your first day of the week or Sunday is your first day of the week. So then also in contrast, on the other side, or on the other hand, you sort of like I said, this is an issue we've discussed before when it comes to Ange Postecoglou. Really, it's something we've discussed before, and I gave you my opinion. I did tell you that right from the onset, I thought it was the wrong decision to make, to part ways with Nuno Espirito Santo, and then replace him with Ange Postecoglou. One, you have you sack a manager who is a very conservative manager, who you sack not based on the results, but based on disagreements, personal disagreements. Hi, LFC, how are you? Good to have you back. Any news, anything exciting from Sunday that you can share with us? What are the sentiments around Liverpool following their 3rd consecutive defeat across all competitions? I've seen people that do a similar kind of job like I do, YouTubers or vloggers or bloggers, whichever way you want to define them. I've seen some with very unkind comments, really. I've seen some calling for the sacking of Anna Slot. Somebody even decided to go vulgar with that, a boring Sunday wedding, the patio all day. Okay. Anyways, so what are your personal sentiments about Anna Slot? For you, do you feel is there cause for concern, or you think it's just a blip in form? Personally, I gave already my feelings about Anna Slot and where Liverpool are when I was answering that question, whether are Liverpool a team in crisis. That video is on the channel under the video section, about just 21 minutes, so you can catch that video. I did it prior to the game, prior to them losing against to Chelsea, but it doesn't change my opinion still. You say Liverpool need a new mindset. A new mindset. When you say they need a new mindset, please elucidate more on that. What do you mean by new mindset? In terms of how they play, in terms of how they go about games, do they need to rid themselves of that mentality that we will win the game very late on? What are you trying to mean particularly in that sense? So for Nottingham Forest, like I said, it's a sharp contrast. You get rid of a conservative manager and then bring a progressive manager. And I said this yesterday and I'll repeat it. I do not think Nottingham Forest are the kind of team that are in a position to have the luxury of dictating the kind of football they want to play in terms of whether it's fancy football or conservative football. They are the kind of team that needs to play football that gives them results. whether you agree, whether you like their playing style or not, they need results. Then maybe after playing maybe six, maybe okay, 4, 5, 6 consecutive seasons in the Premier League, and they are sort of maybe a guaranteed mid-table team, the like of Everton. Okay, not the Everton of recent years, but the Everton of David Moyes, the Aston Villas, the Newcastles, maybe the Brighton of present day, because they've been that kind of team that always finishes within the top 10. They need to guarantee themselves that to then start cherry picking to say, okay, this is now the style of football that we want to be playing. I mean, it's your first time on the continent in as many years. I think since 1983 or something like that. So they cannot be the same team that have that kind of mindset where the owner is saying, Nuno Espirito Santo doesn't play fancy football. It's not entertaining and things like that. You say Luis Diaz said in an interview at Bayern Munich that he prefers Bayern over Liverpool because Bayern and a team and Liverpool was individual team. Bayern are a team. Oh, okay. I understand what you mean. I do not know. I don't know if you followed this conversation, but it's something that I mentioned about while we were discussing Liverpool at one point. And my view was that my worry for Liverpool going into the transfer window and breaking their transfer record twice was part of that worry was that one, you bring Alexander Isak quite expensively, so he's going to look at himself as the next star of that Liverpool team. Then you bring Florian Wirtz, who also wants to be the star of that team, and then you still have Mo Salah, who is the star of the team. And I did say this, while it is possible for all of them to shine, there can only be one or two of the three that has to stand out. Now, in that cohort of three, go ahead and add on Hugo Ekitike, in that cohort of players. Now, by star of the team, I mean the person with whom most of the issues revolve around. We know that for over the years, go back to Jurgen Klopp until last season, Mohamed Salah has always been the star of the team. Even when Sadio Mane and Roberto Firmino were at their very peak, we all know that Mo Salah, more than often, he stood out. If you thought everybody was giving you 90%, Mo Salah took that 90.5% or 91%. That's the kind of player he's been. And I do not think he feels he is in the place where he needs to lose that or to relinquish that. In any case, it's what just won him a new contract on the back of his best season ever in the Premier League. So you do not come on the back of your best ever Premier League season in terms of goals and assists provided, and then suddenly you're going to sort of take a step back or a back foot and say, okay, I'll let Alexander Isak be the star of the team. So if Luis Diaz speaks about it in that sense, I sort of understand that at the end of the day, there's that one player around Liverpool along which issues should rotate around. And last season, it was Mo Salah. Carry the ball, hand it to Mo Salah, let him do the rest. He will decide whether he's going to create or he's going to score himself, So that individuality, that I really, really understand. In sheer comparison, on the other side, and maybe this is about his feeling within the team, but we also know that at Bayern Munich, Harry Kane is the star of the team. Now, but by sheer design, in manner of style or format of playing, we know Vincent Company. I think it was a documentary that was done about Burnley, when he was managing Burnley. And there's a time he was very, very furious with his team. I think they had gone a certain game in which they were supposed to win, and he did say, we should have lost today. And he said, I wasted my time, you wasted your time, none of us should be here. And he said, if I choose 6 players to go on out there, it is my responsibility. I take the responsibility if we lose, if we win, if we draw. But what I do not want to see is a team that doesn't play with energy or, vigor. So, in other words, he's sort of a little bit similar to Pep Guardiola. of how he wants the team to play, his team to play as a team, as a network, connected pieces of, for those of you that did studied some IT, you understand the network bit. I have to leave because it's getting late and I have a school tomorrow. My apologies. It's all right, LFC. Much appreciated for your input, for the short span of time you've been with us. I take no pun intended in that. So thank you so much. So I'll give you the other example of Pep Guardiola with Barcelona. He knew that we all knew Messi was the star of that team, but they still played as a team. They still played as a team. So maybe Luis Diaz is giving us that example that while Hurricane is still the star of the team, they still play as a team. And I do not want to say that Liverpool do not play as a team, but I think, like I said, what he alludes to, there's so many people competing for that lighting bulb moment, for that sport to be the star of the team in a sense. So that's what I will relate it to. But thank you so much for that input, LFC. So, and thank you for taking us to that debate, perhaps one that we wouldn't have had if it hadn't been for you. Then okay, that's different. Okay. Then, like I was saying, so for Nottingham Forest, Evangelos Marinakis will only have himself to blame for the things that have not gone right with his team. He's the actor. In fact, I was reading, I think, a tweet by somebody, I do not remember who, and it was it was a photo of Evangelos Marinakis, a sort of, lost for words, seated in the stands, and his caption was, "He was the architect of his own downfall." And I couldn't agree more with that statement, particularly if we are talking about Nottingham Forest. I did not think, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I did not think there was anything to necessitate the sacking of a manager. Yes, you will just fight with the disagreements, and Nuno Espirito Santo should have done better than come out publicly to voice his, a sort of frustration, or maybe a bit of a sour taste, given how he was growing in distance between him and his boss, Evangelos Marinakis. I thought he should have handled that better, but all that notwithstanding, I think he could have repaired. He could have chosen to repair that relationship as opposed to cutting ties with his, literally Nottingham Forest's most successful manager in recent times. Anyways, I will leave that at that and quickly go to elsewhere because in the other games, in the other action from Sunday, from elsewhere, Oh, did I complete the Premier League table? I did not, because we stopped at Nottingham Forest. But yes, the bottom three are Burnley, West Ham United, and Wolverhampton Wanderers. So yeah, Wolverhampton Wanderers only 2 points following today's draw. West Ham United 4 points, as well as Burnley. Remember, our prediction was that in teams that will get relegated, Burnley was one of them, Sunderland, and Brentford, in my opinion. That was my prediction. So far, Burnley is hugging that area. I did not anticipate that Nottingham Forest were going to sack a manager, so that's why I think my prediction was for them to finish about 9th or 10th, but within, I think, maybe the top half table. So then Brentford are just hugging relegation. They are only about 3 points above relegation, so you can see it's not too far off. Anyways, in the other results over Super Sunday, in the Spanish La Liga, Deportivo Alves beat up against Elche by 3-1, while Sevilla thumped Barcelona by 4-1. Espanyol lost to Real Betis by 2-1, while Rayo Vallecano beat up against Real Sociedad by 0-0. Celta Vigo shared the spoils with Atletico Madrid in a 1-1 draw. I think, now, speaking of teams that have had a worse start, a terrible start to the new season, Real Sociedad is one of those teams. And it doesn't surprise me They are second from bottom with 5 points from 8 games. And whoever the manager is will get sacked if he hasn't already been. Then Rio Oviedo, I mean, yesterday I was surprised that they lost to Levante. I did not see that coming. But Sevilla climbed to sixth place with 13 points following that victory against Barcelona, which means Real Madrid remain top with 21 points, while Barcelona dropped to remain where they dropped in second place with 19 points. Villarreal come in third place with 16 points, while Real Betis have 15 points. Atletico de Madrid, following today's draw, I mean, they should have done better to win that game. I did not watch it, but I have a feeling that. Apologies on that. Looks like we are back. But like I was saying, in the German Bundesliga, VfB Stuttgart beat up against Heidenheim by a goal to nil. Hamburg beat up against Mainz by 4 goals to nil, while Borussia Mönchengladbach shared the spoils in a goalless draw with Freiburg. But just to revert back to that game against Barcelona, again, I was discussing this game with somebody with whom we were following the results feed, not watching the game, because I think at the time we were watching the Manchester City game. And he, when at that point the game was 2-1, and I was like, Barcelona ought to stop this thing where they think they will always bounce back, where they think they can't go down in any given game, and then they can bounce back and pick up points or win games. But Alexis Sanchez, the former Barcelona player, former Udinese, and I think Arsenal and Manchester United, among other teams, scored from the penalty spot to give Sevilla the lead. And then Romelu scored to make it 2-0, while Marcus Rashford pulled one back in the added time of the first half. And then Robert Lewandowski missed the penalty. So then Camona scored to make it 3-1, while Adams scored in the 96th minute to ensure that Sevilla close to a 4-1 victory against Barcelona. I mean, I should be able to catch up on those highlights in just a bit after this broadcast, so that you can digest this further in the course of the week. If I'm being honest, some games did not live to the hype or the expectations. For example, Juventus shared the spoils in a goalless draw with AC Milan. But like I told you in the preamble of this video, Napoli came from a goal down to beat up against Genoa by 2-1 for them to sort of restore parity. Sorry, I think to move backward to the summit of the standings. Yeah, Zambonguisa scored the equalizer, and then Rasmus Hojlund, won it. So Napoli moved back to the summit with 15 points after 6 games. AS Roma are second with 15 points. Milan dropped to third with 13 points, while Juventus and Inter all have 12 points. Pedri says good night. Really, Pedri? You're just saying good night to run away? I thought you'd give us more on give us some of your insights from that loss to Barcelona, as difficult as it may have been for you to watch. If you are still with us, give me a sentence or two. It's my saddest day since Bayern 8-2. Wow. Okay. Bayern 8-2, that's in a bit of a long time. If you compare it to that, I understand the pain of the loss, but I wanted to know what you made of the team, what you think was the problem, or where you got it wrong, in that sort of sense, in that sort of sense. What did you think you guys did not do right to deserve to win? Was it the defensive mistakes? Was it anything to do with the choice of the team? And because personally, I did not think the team was bad. I thought the team was good. Because Pau Kubasi, Ronald Araujo, Jules Koundé, Gerard Martin, Pedri, Frankie de Jong, Ferran Torres, Dani Olmo. Of course, Barcelona, by their own measure of standards, anytime that they're going to play without Lamine Yamal, they will miss him. Anytime they play without Rafinha, they will miss him. So, I mean, Lewandowski leading the lines, I would have hoped for better. If I'm being honest, I would have hoped for better. But you say Araujo and Lewandowski were so that what Araujo feels like a constant pain. He is shit, idiot, cannot play ball at all. Olmo, Lewandowski, Araujo do not deserve to even play for a championship team. Wow. And yet, I thought, even at his advanced age, what, 37, coming on to 38, or if not already 38, that Robert Lewandowski still has it, still got it. Danny Olmo, I mean, I like I like Danny Olmo. I During the course of the summer, he was one of those players that was linked with the potential move to Manchester City. But yeah, I think I do understand your frustration as a Barcelona fan, because if you are a Barcelona fan when that fixture came out, I think if you when you assess the kinds of points that maybe you will be able, or the kinds of games that you should be able to win at the start of the season or in the first 10 games of the season, I'm sure Sevilla away, as difficult as the game in itself or the fixture in itself is, given Sevilla's recent problems or challenges or performances in the last couple of maybe 3-4 seasons, you'd argue that it should be one where Barcelona look at it and say, if we give it a go, we should be able to win this kind of fixture. That must have been the kind of feeling that one would sort of get in terms of when you look at particularly back to last season. I think last season, yes, Barcelona beat up against Sevilla home and away, 4-1 away to Sevilla and 5-1 at home for Barcelona. Then you go back to the previous season, 2023-2024, Barcelona still beat Sevilla home and away, 1-0 and 2-1. So again, then you go back to 2022-2023, Barcelona beat up against Sevilla home and away by 3-0 in either fixture, so kept clean sheets. You rewind back to 2021-2022, and that was the last time Sevilla had picked a point off Barcelona, because they forced them in a 1-1 draw when Barcelona played away to Sevilla, before Barcelona won by 0-0 in the reverse fixture. So that must have been the case when you guys looked at that fixture, and yet you are disappointed that it did not turn out to be that way. So yeah, I sort of understand your frustration when it comes to that, in regards to that a result from today. We are looking at yes, the La Liga table, in regards to, okay, we stopped at Atletico Madrid. I mean, Sevilla, Elche, Athletic Bilbao, Espanyol. I mean, from Atletico Madrid to Athletic Bilbao, they all have, just 13 points. Let me see what Pedri is adding to his submission. If you put a 3-year-old instead of Lewandowski, the 3-year-old would have done more to help us. I mean, it did help you. I remember that game, he came off the bench in that game against Rio Oviedo, and he scored to make it 2-1 before Ronald Araujo scored to make it 3-1. So, but I understand your frustration with the aging Polish striker there. Like I said, today some games did not live to the hype. We talked about that game between Juventus and AC Milan that ended in a goalless draw. The game between read comments before. I'll read the comments. Oh, okay. You say Olmo was such a waste of money. He's like a little kitten who doesn't know how to walk. He's so disabled. He barely has a correct pass. He reminds me of women in football. And then you added on that if you put a 3-year-old instead of Lewandowski, the 3-year-old would have done better. Again, like I said, I did not watch the game, so I won't comment on it in the context of one who may have watched the game. But I'll say this, that even good players have bad days in office. And for Barcelona, this might have been the day. And it does not ease Barcelona's concerns, given knowing that they are without Rafinha, without Lamine Yamal, with that growing injury that he's sort of struggling with. Because I think he returned, played one game, and then sort of found himself injured again. So that in itself does not help the situation, because we know that Rafinha and Lamine Yamal were the hallmark of Barcelona's attacking strength. Last season they embodied all that. While Ferran Torres has been a good deputy, coming in and pulling the strings. I feel things Marcus Rashford has not done bad overall, but he's yet to spark. He's yet to be the kind of Marcus Rashford that we saw in the 2022-2023 Premier League season. In that kind of sense, where he scored, I think, 17 Premier League goals, and then across all competitions, he had about 30 goals. So, yeah, but I do understand that with you on that front. So, yes, I was talking, we were moving to the French League One, the game between Lille and Paris Saint-Germain finished in a 1-1 draw there. So, equally, I thought that there could be a difference in that. Pedri comes back to say, but also I would place some responsibility on Hansi, that meaning Hans Flick, because he's playing fatal offside trap. It's basically a deadly tactic. He is not understanding the Indigo. Sorry, he's not understanding. Maybe you mean the Inigo Martinez was one who was very good. So, I mean, when it comes to tactics, some managers are so sold on their own system, or they believe in their own systems, that they wouldn't change them for anything. Yesterday we were speaking, and I made comparisons. We talked about Manchester United, and that in games that they've lost, you get the feeling that when you analyze an opponent they are facing, you get the feeling that maybe they should be tweaking their system to try and overcome that opponent. And Barcelona, for me, is one of those teams. They have a blueprint with which they play with under Hansi Flick. So we know it's attacking football, be dominant with the ball, and then create as many chances, score as many goals. But when it comes to conceding the other side, they are very, very vulnerable. In fact, when you go back to the goal that they conceded against PSG, which, in my view, in my humble view, still looked offside. I did not get to see the actual lines. The sort of how that sort of image that they present to you in the Champions League. I did not get to see that, but I thought, or I felt that Goncalo Ramos was offside. But again, Barcelona were trying to do an offside trap against Goncalo Ramos, and then he went on that squad, and they lost that game by 2-1. So when you highlight the same situation again, I sort of understand it, because they play with a very, very high line that I know for certain. And sometimes on a given day, depending on the opponent, you may want to tweak a thing or two about your structure or your system or the instructions that you give to your players in a way of respecting a particular opponent on a given day. The club announced Lamine Yamal injured, so he doesn't go. So he doesn't go to the Spanish national team because they play him, although he was injured all the time, but it came at the cost of 3 points because he did play. Today he will be back as soon as the international break is over. Yeah, that's a trick. That's the trick of that stature of saying that certain players are injured so that they do not get someone to the national team is an old trick in the football playbook. It's one that managers look to try to leverage on. In some cases, managers play those players and then they are taken off as though they are injured during that very last game prior to the international break. I've seen cases where international team managers have been very insistent to say, with someone that player, let him come and we will be assessed by our own team doctors, and then we will decide whether he is fit enough to play or not. In other cases, it's been club managers appealing to national team managers about certain players to say, this is a player that maybe has just come back from injury in recent times. They're not yet fully fit. Yes, I understand they are closer to your team, but I would appreciate it if you did not play them and that kind of thing. We know, because we know that when players go to the international break, so many players get injured during the international break. And as bad as it is, it happens more often than we care to admit. I seem to remember a time, I think it was last season but one, when Arsenal were chasing the Premier League title, and Thomas Partey was summoned to the Ghanaian national team, and they had to send him with one of the team physios, to sort of monitor him and maybe sort of manage him while he's away from the club, so that the whole objective was to make sure he doesn't get injured while away on international duty, because of how important he was to that Arsenal side and that kind of thing. So I completely understand when you make that decision and you say he will be back as soon as the international break is done. So I wouldn't be surprised if the facts are as you state them to be. You say some behind the scenes news after the PSG game. Lamine called Luis de la Fuente and told him not to call him up because he felt uncomfortable. But Luis said, I don't care if you played PSG game. Then you'll find he doesn't care at his players. I mean, you see, I want to sort of understand it from a manager's perspective. For example, if you're a national team manager, you want to summon the best players that a country has to give yourself a chance at winning those games at the national team level. However, I've also noted this, that sometimes those national team managers will play key players in games that are not that important. We know that sometimes during international breaks, you say he doesn't care at his players. Sometimes they play significant players in friendlies, and you're thinking to yourself, yes, I understand it's an international break, you summon these players, but what is this kind of player doing, in that kind of game? I mean, it's an international friendly, it doesn't mean much. You can actually use it to test, other players that you think should be part of your core squad or this sort of substitute players, and they choose to the contrary. So I understand the frustration of club managers and their club fans as well when it comes to how players are used during those games. I'll give you another example, and this relates, I think, to Bukayo Saka. There's a time I think the entire footballing world would agree or felt that he had played one too many games, and yet even the England national team, could never afford him a break, and until he got injured, and then they all had to play without him in that sort of sense. So sometimes it's up to the players to protect themselves. I know for a fact that some players have claimed non-existent injuries to avoid going away from the national duty. The way you sort of insinuate or hint about it in this submission on Lamine Yamal, so that is also a case, So I understand, and then what national team managers do is, if they want to summon you, they'll summon you, and once they summon you and it's out there in the public domain, once you decline to report for international duty, you're going to be branded as a player that doesn't want to play for his country, they're not patriotic, and things like that, So yeah, it's sort of a two-way sort of street, but I do understand our respective frustrations when it comes to those situations with players and national team football. But that's what I'll say about that. Anyways, guys, it's been a very, very fruitful discussion, one of the best discussions we've had in recent times on the channel, given how our numbers have significantly dropped in terms of people that watch us, live. And I do appreciate your input for every single one of you, Pedri, LFC, and those that follow the conversation without submitting comments. and things like that. I do not take your time for granted. For those that watch these live broadcasts later after they've concluded, I equally appreciate you a great deal. So thank you. Allow me, in fact, I thought this was going to be about 20 to 25 minutes, at most 30, but we made it 50, uh, 9 minutes shy of an hour. But thank you so much, LFC. Thank you so much, Pedri, for your kind uh, time that you've dedicated us and the contribution that you've added to this debate and the context, with all that feedback. I do appreciate you a great deal. You sort of help expound on our debates and make them more meaningful. So thank you so much. Allow me wish you a blessed night, and let's link up again tomorrow and discuss more or digest further some of those results. I think we'll get to talk about some teams in depth during the course of the international break. I'm looking to have a deeper conversation, perhaps with somebody pertaining the conundrum of the Uganda Premier League and the sort of situation that there is. We know that things are not pretty. Vipers has opted out the Ghana Premier League and things like that. So if I do get that person, you will be the first to know. It will be out there on this channel. Thank you and have a blessed night. Bye bye for now.